When I look like this, I care about what a man's doing. I do. But when I look like this, oh, I don't care about what you're doing. Do you? Because I'm going to do me for sure.
At just 20 years old, Lanyah Dawson was a young mother with dreams of making her mark as a rapper. On social media, she shared laughter, music, and moments of motherhood, painting the picture of a life still unfolding. But behind the posts and the promise was a reality far darker than anyone could imagine. In the early hours of December 7, 2024, Lanyah's body was discovered deep inside Cincinnati's Mount Airy Forest, shot and left alone on a secluded road. How did a vibrant young woman, celebrated by friends and family, end up the victim of such a brutal and mysterious crime? Lanyah Dawson was more than just another name in the headlines. She was a daughter, a mother, and a young woman with ambitions that stretched beyond her Cincinnati neighborhood. At 20 years old, she had already embraced the demanding role of motherhood, raising her one-year-old daughter while pursuing her passion for music. Friends described her as energetic, funny, and the type of person who could light up a room with her presence. Online, she posted snippets of her life, moments of joy, music ambitions, and glimpses of the family she cherished. To many, she seemed unstoppable, balancing responsibility with dreams, admired for her strength and determination. But beneath the surface, the picture wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Being a young mother came with pressure, and stepping into the world of rap exposed her to new crowds, late-night meetups, and people who didn't always have the best intentions. In the weeks leading up to her death, small red flags began to emerge. Cryptic social media posts, sudden changes in her routine, and whispers of conflicts that hinted at deeper troubles. Those close to her may not have realized how dangerous her world had become until it was too late. What began as an ordinary night quickly spiraled into something far darker. In the hours before her death, Lanyah's movements remain clouded in mystery. Phone calls, text messages, and meetings that may have led her directly into danger. She was last seen alive in circumstances that raised more questions than answers, and within hours, she vanished from the familiar world of family and friends. When her body was discovered in the early morning inside Cincinnati's Mount Airy Forest, the reality struck with devastating force. This wasn't an accident, nor was it random. The location, the evidence left behind, and the silence that followed pointed toward something chilling, something planned. For a community that knew her as a vibrant young mother with a promising future, the revelation was almost unthinkable. How could someone admired for her spirit and determination end up the target of such violence? And what truths would investigators uncover as the case unfolded? Have you ever scrolled through someone's profile and thought you knew their whole story, only to realize later there was so much more hidden behind the screen? Cases like Lanyah Dawson's remind us that what we see online is often just a fraction of the truth. You're watching Global Crime Venue, where viral fame hides chilling secrets. From TikTok dancers and Instagram couples to rising Facebook personalities, we reveal the dark side of the spotlight. When the perfect posts turn into tragedies, we break down exactly how it all unraveled. These aren't just online stories. They're real cases with real victims. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case breakdown. In our next episode, we'll dive into another shocking story of love, control, and a hidden danger that no one saw coming. Here's the untold side of what really happened. On December 7, 2024, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Cincinnati police officers responded to a report of a possible shooting inside Mount Airy Forest. The location was identified as Trail Ridge Road, a narrow and isolated pathway within the park. Upon arrival, officers discovered the body of 20-year-old Lanyah Dawson lying unresponsive in the roadway. Emergency responders confirmed that she had suffered at least one gunshot wound and was deceased at the scene. The area where the body was located is significant to investigators because Trail Ridge Road is generally accessible only by pedestrians and is not heavily trafficked during late-night hours. This factor suggested that either the victim was intentionally brought to a secluded spot or that she was already in the area when the crime occurred. The lack of immediate witnesses heightened the difficulty of determining the sequence of events. Forensic investigators recovered a total of 8 9mm shell casings within close proximity to the victim's body. The casings were collected, marked, and logged as evidence for further ballistic analysis. Their distribution pattern indicated that multiple shots had been fired at the scene, and the volume of discharged rounds made it likely that the firearm was semi-automatic. Blood was also present near the victim's body, consistent with her injuries. The presence of both shell casings and blood at the site led investigators to conclude that Dawson was likely shot at the location, as opposed to being killed elsewhere and later transported. The roadway was immediately secured by officers, and entrances into that section of Mount Airy Forest were restricted. Crime scene tape was deployed, and specialized units processed the area to preserve evidence. Investigators documented the scene using photographs, sketches, and laser measurements to ensure accuracy in mapping the physical layout. The location of the body, the shell casings, and the blood evidence were catalogued in precise relation to each other. Detectives searched for additional trace evidence in the surrounding area, including shoe prints, tire tracks, or signs of a struggle. Soil samples were collected, and vegetation was examined for potential blood spatter or disturbance. No firearm was recovered at the scene. Officers also canvassed the perimeter for discarded items such as cell phones, clothing, or personal belongings that might connect a suspect to the incident. Autopsy results were pending at the time but would be used to confirm the number of gunshot wounds, trajectory, and time of death. These findings were expected to be cross-referenced with the ballistic analysis of the recovered shell casings. If matched to a specific weapon, this could provide investigators with leads once compared against weapons recovered in unrelated arrests or databases. The Cincinnati Police Department's homicide unit assumed responsibility for the case immediately after the initial response. Once the scene in Mount Airy Forest was secured, detectives began the process of reconstructing the hours leading to the victim's death. Their first priority was establishing a timeline. This required collecting phone records, analyzing call logs and text messages, and securing warrants to access social media accounts. Digital evidence became essential in determining where she had been, who she had spoken with, and what arrangements might have been made before the incident. Surveillance footage was another critical focus. Although the forest itself had no cameras, investigators expanded their search to nearby roads, businesses, and residential security systems. Reviewing footage allowed them to check for vehicles or individuals entering and leaving the area during the time frame under investigation. Detectives also canvassed neighborhoods close to the park, interviewing residents about unusual activity during the night of the shooting. The investigation incorporated forensic analysis beyond the initial scene. Ballistic testing was requested to determine whether the firearm used matched weapons linked to other crimes. The Hamilton County Coroner's Office conducted an autopsy to confirm the cause of death, approximate time of death, and to assess whether there were any defensive wounds or other indicators of struggle. Results from toxicology were expected to clarify whether any substances may have been present in the victim's system. Attention also shifted to her personal associations. Investigators interviewed family members, friends, and acquaintances to identify her last known movements. Questions centered on recent conflicts, new acquaintances, and whether she had mentioned concerns about safety. Detectives examined prior records for evidence of disputes or police involvement in her social circle. Digital data provided another layer of leads, as investigators searched for individuals with whom she had frequent contact in the days before the incident. Community cooperation was emphasized throughout the process. The police department released multiple public statements requesting assistance. Crime Stoppers was highlighted as an anonymous channel for tips, with authorities noting that even small pieces of information could be useful in building the larger picture. Officers also monitored online discussions, tracking any mention of the case that might connect to credible leads. Despite the investigative steps taken, authorities did not release any names of suspects or persons of interest during the early stages. The lack of public identification pointed to an ongoing need for evidence strong enough to support charges. The department confirmed that the case remained active, with leads continuously evaluated as they were received. In the days following the discovery of Lanyah Dawson's body, the Cincinnati community organized several gatherings intended to bring attention to the case and to provide visible support for her immediate family. These gatherings took the form of vigils, balloon releases, and organized events that ensured the victim's name remained in public discussion. One of the most noted gatherings occurred in the parking lot of Walnut Hills High School, a location connected to several members of Lanyah's family and familiar to many local residents. Participants arranged candles to form the initials of the victim's name, creating a visual centerpiece. Photographs of Lanyah were placed near the display, and attendees released balloons into the sky as a symbolic act representing loss and remembrance. Family members used these gatherings as platforms for direct statements to the media. Her mother, Lanyah Dawson, and her grandmother, Michelle Dawson, each spoke about the impact of the homicide and their need for answers. Their public remarks focused on the responsibilities Lanyah carried as a mother, her plans for the future, and their demand that the case receive full attention until it was solved. Coverage of these gatherings showed a diverse attendance. Family members, close friends, neighbors, and individuals from across the city participated. Some attendees had not known Lanyah personally but came to support the family and to express their concerns about violence in the community. Local reporters documented the scale of these events, frequently noting the visible frustration and urgency communicated by those present. The consistent emphasis in family statements was on maintaining focus. Rather than allowing the incident to fade into the background of Cincinnati's ongoing crime statistics, relatives and supporters used vigils to reinforce the message that her case required priority. Media outlets repeated these calls, highlighting the gatherings as demonstrations of collective concern. Beyond family-led efforts, community leaders and activists also incorporated Lanyah Dawson's name into wider conversations about gun violence. At the time of her death, her killing was recorded as the city's 69th homicide of the year. Local organizations and advocacy groups referenced her case in their appeals for stronger preventative measures, expanded resources for at-risk neighborhoods, and more collaboration between residents and law enforcement. Each vigil and balloon release served a dual function, honoring the victim's life and amplifying the demand for continued attention. The events became markers of persistence, ensuring that the public remained aware of the homicide while investigators continued their work. The repetition of gatherings over several days reinforced the seriousness of the case and demonstrated the determination of her family and community not to allow the incident to be overlooked. At this stage of the investigation, no individual has been officially named or arrested in connection with the death of Lanyah Dawson. Because of this, investigators have focused on building possible profiles of the unknown perpetrator using evidence from the scene, forensic examination, and background research into Dawson's life. The physical crime scene offered the first indicators of how the suspect may have acted. 8 9mm shell casings were recovered near the body, along with visible bloodstains, suggesting the shooting occurred at that exact location. This detail indicated that the suspect either brought Dawson to the site intentionally or encountered her there under planned circumstances. Choosing a secluded area such as Mount Airy Forest implies that the individual may have had prior knowledge of the terrain or selected it deliberately to reduce the chance of detection. Forensic evidence plays a central role in narrowing down suspect possibilities. Shell casings can be analyzed through the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, NIBIN, to determine if the same firearm was used in other incidents. Each casing carries unique markings that may link the weapon to a registered owner or to prior unsolved cases. Investigators also collected potential trace evidence, including fingerprints or DNA residue, from items at the scene. If usable profiles are recovered, they can be compared against criminal databases to identify matches. Digital forensics form the second major component of the suspect background analysis. Dawson maintained communication through calls, texts, and social media platforms. Investigators would typically obtain warrants to review her recent digital activity, reconstructing a timeline of her final hours. This may reveal who she was last in contact with, whether any suspicious meetings were arranged, or if deleted conversations point toward a concealed relationship with a suspect. Personal associations are also examined. Investigators look into family members, acquaintances, and any romantic connections to identify potential conflicts or disputes. In cases involving young adults, disagreements over finances, personal relationships, or reputation often emerge as possible motives. The absence of immediate signs of robbery at the scene increases the likelihood that the crime was personal rather than opportunistic. Behavioral analysis contributes further to building a suspect profile. The use of multiple gunshots indicates a determination to ensure Dawson's death, which may suggest prior animosity or a motive beyond simple confrontation. Law enforcement considers whether the shooting style reflects calculated planning or impulsive aggression. Understanding this behavioral pattern helps narrow the suspect pool to individuals capable of acting with such intent. Finally, investigators extend the background search beyond Dawson's immediate circle. This includes checking whether individuals in the wider community, particularly those linked to local music or social groups she interacted with, had reasons to target her. Background checks and prior criminal histories of persons of interest are cross-referenced with evidence to determine viability as suspects. And that concludes today's case. But remember, this is just one of countless stories the world has yet to uncover. Here on Global Crime Venue, our mission is to uncover the facts, honor the victims who can no longer speak, and make sure their stories are never erased. If what you heard today made you think, know this, more cases are on the way that will shock you, haunt you, and change the way you look at social media and the world around you. Be sure to subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. New investigations are released regularly. And trust me, you'll want to be here when the next story breaks. Before you leave, share your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you most in this case? Your voice keeps these stories alive. Until we meet again, stay cautious, stay informed, and never forget, justice starts with truth. Global Crime Venue, uncovering the stories behind the screen.